Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis.
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
And welcome to NYRA Bets Road to the Kentucky Derby.
And the Kentucky Oaks.
Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. Myself and Kaylie Shapiro here for NYRA Bets to get you ready for a really big weekend of preps. We have coast to coast, Gulfstream Park up here at the Big A, as well as out in the West Coast at Santa Anita. Some really great action, both on the Derby Trail and on the Oaks Trail. But before we get to that, I want to remind you to obviously press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is completely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos are dropping on the network, and it's completely free. And like I said, we got a lot of great content for you, whether it is full card analyses, race previews, really special guests from across the country. Definitely want to make sure to tune in and press that subscribe button today. Well, like I said, we had a lot coming up this week, which we're going to get to, but we also saw some pretty interesting races last week at Oaklawn Park in particular. Speed King winning the Southwest, and then we saw Take Charge Milady win for Ken McPeak in the Martha Washington. And there was a horse that I know you kind of like, Quiet Side, who kind of did what she did again, which is kind of run second. But I think that's a little bit more complicated with the trip.
Yeah, I think she had a really complicated trip. I don't think that she ever really truly got comfortable in the race or settled. She didn't break. And then, she was a little bit headstrong, it seemed, and the jockey got a little bit heavy on her mouth a couple of times, and I just think she didn't get the best of trips, and I'm willing to take her one more time after that. And I still think she's a really nice horse, and hopefully next time out she can work out a better trip, maybe more fuller fields, and help her out as well. So
absolutely. Well, I'm hoping so too, because I just had a Triple Crown fantasy draft and I took her in that in about the 5th round. So I'm hoping you're right about this and she comes back to run pretty well. But I bring up those races at Oaklawn last week as a segue to our Derby and Oaks top 6. And you move Quiet Side down a little bit. Not a lot of movement, though, within either of our lists. And I think it's because you look at that result in the Martha Washington and the Southwest. I don't know if there's anything that really blew you off the page necessarily that goes, wow, this is a really serious new contender on the face of it. So I will say for my Derby list, and this is something you and I both keep track of a lot, a couple of new names on my list, not so much because of an effort that they put in, but because they're back on the work tab. In particular, Journalism, who was the winner of the Low South Futurity, had been off for about 2 months, now back on the work tab. That's a really nice horse out in California. One of the few non-Baffert horses that I think is really strong out there in California. So he's right there. Horse like Tip Top Thomas is just outside of my top 6. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more about Ferocious as it relates to the Holy Bull this week. You moved Quiet Side down a little bit, but to your point, giving her another shot.
Yeah, I mean, I felt kind of silly leaving her as high as I had her when, she wasn't able to get the win in the Martha Washington. But again, I think she was super compromised by the trip that she got. So, she's not off my radar whatsoever.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing her run back.
Well, and speaking of your list, we're going to see 2 of those runners come this week. And so there could be some movement one way or the other on both of our lists come next week time. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And we can dive into this. And let's start out in the West Coast. And let's start with the Robert B. Lewis, which is, listen, from a betting standpoint, is it a great race? Probably not, because it's a 5-horse field. 3 of them are Bob Baffert. Those are the overwhelming favorites, with your favorite being the reigning 2-year-old champion male and Breeders' Cup juvenile winner, Citizen Bull. But Rodriguez, 7-5 in the morning line, he really wowed a lot of people with that 101 buyer speed figure last time out. Interested in kind of some of your thoughts with how you looked at this one. And I know these are horses that we've been, and you, in particular, Citizen Bull, have been watching for quite a while.
Well, initially looking at this race, you got to figure that, Citizen Bull and Rodriguez are going to go off at very short prices. So I was figuring out who I was going to play underneath either one of them. I really I think, Rodriguez coming in here. I think he's been looking really good in his works, maybe even a little better than Citizen Bull. But then again, you can't discount Citizen Bull coming in here, who's clearly, a very talented horse. I mean, the Breeders' Cup win, it was an easy win for him. He was the only horse that went in that race and had a big advantage. But, his resume coming in here is too good to not take him seriously, obviously. And I had a lot of interest in the Wesley Ward horse as well. That's switching back to dirt. Wesley Ward has great numbers switching back to dirt. routes, and this clock tower has a lot of good speed as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see which one of the Bafferts goes with clock tower, and that will kind of help you determine, how the race is going to play out from there.
You're absolutely right. And I think one of the things to keep in mind with these early preps, so many times trainers use these preps as an opportunity to teach a horse to do something new or to try to see if the horse can do something new. And remember Epicenter a few years ago, I believe it was the Louisiana Derby, where they rated him. And they did that intentionally because they knew you weren't going to get to the lead in the Kentucky Derby. So let's see if he can sit a little bit. And he could. And he was really dominant. Now, other times you see that kind of blow up in people's faces, where they try to do something that doesn't necessarily work. Citizen Bull has passed horses before. We've seen him do it. But to your point, you got Juan Rodriguez on Rodriguez. Juan Hernandez, I should say, on Rodriguez. That horse is going to go. Like you say, Clock Tower likely going to go for Wesley Ward as well. Citizen Bull maybe sitting that pocket trip, sitting third behind the early speed there. Listen, Santa Anita can be a little bit of a merry-go-round track. Maybe there's not a lot of passing going on that day. We'll have to see. One of the things I will point out, Citizen Bull coming in with back-to-back bullet works, which is a very typical Bob Baffert, this horse is ready to roll type of a move. And I have to say, jockey Martin Garcia, undefeated on Citizen Bull. And more importantly, Citizen Bull undefeated when Martin Garcia is aboard. So only loss came with Mike Smith aboard. So like I said, this seems to be a good symbiosis between rider and horse with regards to Citizen Bull. And I think an opportunity for him to rate a little bit there. Rodriguez, listen, he broke his maiden so impressively last time out with that 101 Beyer speed figure, but that was with Lasix. Now we're switching off Lasix, so maybe there's some questions there. I think you could certainly ask, but this is going to be one. We'll see how the board plays out on Saturday afternoon. It's going to be fun, though, because listen, say what you will about the betting aspect of this race. If you care about getting ready for the Kentucky Derby, you got to pay attention to how Bob Baffert's doing.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be super interesting to see the three of these, what his game plan is coming into this race, who's able to rate, who likes to control things up on the front end. So I think this race will be interesting to tell, what his intentions are with these three in the future.
No, I absolutely agree. And it'll be interesting because now with the hype around Barnes and Rodriguez and even Romanesque and some of these other, it's almost like Citizen Bull's have forgotten about horse. He's like, hey, I'm over here. I'm the champion 2-year-old, by the way. I don't know if you remember me, but it's funny. It's an opportunity for him to reestablish himself as a dominant figure on the Kentucky Derby scene. Now, this is the race I think you're really looking forward to, which is actually on Sunday, the Las Virgenes, which is going 1 mile for the 3-year-old fillies, another 5-horse field. And really, let's call this for what it is. It seems like it's going to be a match race between Tenma and Cipriani. And I mean, I'll just turn the floor over to you to talk about this one.
Yeah, it's going to be the Tenma Cipriani showdown. I know last week we were saying that, I was wondering if he was going to put these two up against each other, maybe send them different places. So I'm really excited to see the two of them go head to head. Definitely two different horses kind of going into this race. Cipriani, she just has that debut under her belt, sprinting. She got a 58 Beyer, I think, in that first effort, which is a little light, but she won so impressively that she has, every right to move up here. And I think she absolutely will. But I'm going to more so take the approach of going with Tenma as a horse that's shown me more already. And also the one I prefer out of the two. And she's been working fantastic, but both of them have. So it should be a really great race.
It should be. And Tenma is a horse early on, I think you and I both identified as one we really liked. I mean, I remember her in that second race, I think it was, which was a stakes race. I really liked her in that. And she was kind of the other Baffert horse because she was going against Nooney in that race. And Nooney was the one that was taking the public money. And I said, man, I think Tenma's the better horse. And she just really has looked so good. But as we talked about last week with Cipriani, she's been working with the boys. I mean, she's been working against some of the best in Baffert's barn. So clearly a lot of expectations around both of these fillies. And it's going to be a fun one for sure. But I think, we focus so much on the Brad Cox runners but once Immersive got hurt and is kind of on the bench, it does feel like this Oaks picture really has opened up quite a bit. Good Cheer, very good horse. Muhima, very good horse. But Tenma has an opportunity to make a statement, I think, on Sunday.
Absolutely. And when you watch the videos of this horse work and even just her past races, look at how she picks horses up around the turn and how she accelerates around the turn. That's something I really, really love about this horse as well. So I'm excited to see Cipriani, get a second race under her belt.
Yeah.
She's going to improve a ton here. And like you said, she's been working with the boys, and the only filly that she was working with is Tenma. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's good with good. I mean, Bob works his horses with the best of them. So that's good to see in terms of keeping them in high regard. Let's head to the other coast, which is the Atlantic coast. And let's talk about what's going to happen down in Helendale Beach, Florida this weekend. Got the Grade 3 Holy Bull. For me, listen, this is just a me thing. I'm a little older than you. When it comes to be Holy Bull season, this feels like the start of the Derby preps. To me, the Holy Bull always was one of those races that just got me really excited. And part of it is Holy Bull, one of my favorite racehorses of all time. That 1994 Travers, still cry when I watch that. Anyway, this is a field going a mile and a 16th, 7-horse field. It's so interesting because there's one horse that obviously pops off the page, and that's Ferocious, who was dazzling in debut up at Saratoga. We were there in the apron watching that race in the winner's circle. Horse has had some disappointment since then, coming in at the second, to the hopeful to Chancellor McPatrick, and chased lone speed in East Avenue in the Breeders' Futurity. Didn't get the best trip in the Breeders' Cup Classic, or Breeders' Cup Juvenile, I should say. Has come back from a little bit of a layoff, though, freshening, seems to be cranked up and ready to go, and now is facing kind of a slew of new faces. Whether it's Tappan Street, whether it's Burnham Square, whether it's Burning Glory, these are all last out maiden winners, with the exception of Guns Loaded for Jose D'Angelo, who's coming off that Mucho Macho Man victory.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see Ferocious get back. And I understand what you mean by maybe it was a little disappointing, his races following his debut, because his debut was just so good that almost everything he could do after that could seem disappointing, but he never did anything wrong. I mean, in his second start, he ran second, like you said, in a Grade 1 to Chancellor McPatrick, and then he chased around East Avenue, who I love, but had things his own way that day. So, and then in the Breeders' Cup, we all know what happened. And, I just think this horse seems to be working really well coming into this race. He's getting blinkers on now, so I think they're going to be more aggressive with him. And he's also a horse that we always thought, if he's just able to get out and get up in front, that he wouldn't have as many issues as he's encountered in the past. But I also think, the blinkers are going to help him out a ton. That's going to be key here. But definitely Guns Loaded looks to be the speed of the group. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see with Guns Loaded, because he's a horse I was really high on going into that Mucho Macho Man. Really respect the Jose D'Angelo barn a lot. And this is one, gun runner up top out of a Bernardini mare. Like, hello, this is a horse that's meant to go 2 turns and meant to go quite a distance, $800,000 purchase, but was kind of, shortening strides a little bit at the end of that 1 mile Mucho Macho Man. And that was when he got everything his own way. I mean, he was able to be lone speed that day. They went really slow. The fractions were, for Gulfstream Park in particular, were really glacial. And he was still barely able to hold on now. But you then pointed something out to me, which, to be fair, I don't know if I necessarily mentioned my analysis, which was he never got past in the gallop out, though. That, the horse that was coming, Treaty of Rome, never got past him. And, maybe it insinuated, hey, maybe there's something more here. Maybe 2 turns is actually not a bad thing for this horse. And then you have horses like Tappan Street, Burnham Square. Bill Mott's got a horse, Burning Glory, in this race. New shooters, last out maiden winners. But it's going to be, with those last out maiden winners, sometimes you see a horse like Patch Adams last week kind of fizzle a little bit. Other times they take that next step forward. You never know what you're going to get, though.
Yeah, I definitely noticed what you did about Guns Loaded, shortening up stride, but like you said, wasn't passed in the gallop out whatsoever. So that was pretty promising to see. Looks to be the speed here. I know I'm putting Ferocious on top of him, but I think, he's probably going to be the key here, and then I also have an interest in some taking Ferocious at such a short price. The Bill Mott horse at 8-1 seems like, a good horse to use underneath, that has a bit of experience coming in here as well, and seems to just be improving with every start as well. And, with Bill Mott, they're just going to continue to improve with every start. So
they do tend to do that with Bill. He tends to be a pretty good trainer these days, but but listen, I will say we're going to have a new drinking game on the show that people at home can. Every time I pick a Brad Cox horse to win, they got to drink, and every time you pick a Bill Mott horse, they got to drink.
Okay.
All right, and that way we both have our tells.
Yeah,
We'll just say that we both have our tells. Tappan Street's an interesting horse for me. For Cox, last out maiden winner, and won so impressively in debut. Another one that's kind of bred to do this sort of a thing, and for Cox to step this horse up straight into this spot, I thought was promising. I thought the horse showed a lot of ability in that debut and was able to kind of actually come from a little off the pace that day to show the ability to rate. Doesn't need the lead, but is stretching out from 7 furlongs, might be able to get to that lead. Those 7 furlong winners to me are always interesting because that's such a tough distance, and that's usually a distance that indicates you're going to want to go longer. So when you win and debut at 7, you get a little extra brownie point from me, sort of a thing. And a lot of times when I look at it, but Burnham Square on the far outside for Ian Wilkes. Ian Wilkes had a horse, Pitkin, who ran a huge race to finish second this past weekend at Pegasus, and at 15-1. So Ian Wilkes knows what he's doing when it comes to training, and Burnham Square is a horse that's gotten progressively faster too. So should be a fun one down at Gulfstream Park for the Holy Bull. And,
I think this is a really good betting race, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Much better. Yeah, very good betting race. I think you could make an argument for 4 or 5 of these horses. If you want to try to go against Ferocious, you can go. Listen, this isn't the race that they're aiming towards. They're aiming towards the Kentucky Derby. They just want to get him back on the track, get him some points. Sort of a thing, and he'll be in a good spot. So maybe somebody else is more cranked up. It might be one of these last out maiden winners really pops. So yeah, there's some opportunities I think for a price. Now, speaking of opportunities for a price, the Forward Gal, which is the Kentucky Oaks Prep race, 11 horse field going 7 furlongs for the 3-year-old fillies. And I mean, listen, Rojo Rita is your favorite for Safi Joseph Jr. Obviously, we saw what Safi did last weekend down at Pegasus, winning with White Abario, winning with Mystic Lake, winning with a whole bunch of horses, and he's been on a tear down in South Florida, which is not surprising. But you got a couple of Brad Cox horses in this race, Stunner and Eclatant. You got a horse like Justin Queso. You got a horse that I know my family is going to be rooting for, Costa Amalfitana, because hey, it's a little Italian. Amalfitana, we got to root for that horse. You got an old name like the Queen's MG in this race. This is a fun race.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun race. Definitely the morning line favorite at 2-1. Rojo Rita. I understand she had a really impressive debut. What did she win by 17?
16 and a half.
16 and a half. My bad. Yeah, 16 and a half lengths. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know how comfortable I feel taking a horse just going off of one start at 2-1. And when you look at that race was in November, and then I'm looking at all the horses that ran back. They all did. Only one of them was able to break her maiden in a claiming level after. So that was just something. Obviously, the horse has a ton of talent and speed. So I mean. I understandably a morning line favorite, sort of, but I was more so looking at Stunner on the outside, who has great early speed and is 4-1 on the morning line and is, a little bit more proven coming in here. And as well as obviously Eclatant, the number 7 as well, who we last saw run third in the Goldenrod. So.
Yeah, no, Eclatant I think is a very good horse. I like that one a lot. If you're able to get 9-2, I think that's a good price. I will give a shout out to Justin Queso, the Ian Wilkes horse, 8-1. I think that's potentially a good price and a good value on that horse, who is a last out maiden winner as well. But as I mentioned, Wilkes knows how to train him up down in South Florida and can get these wins in big spots and might not get bet down as much as a trainer like Brad Cox or even Safi Joseph Jr., Jose D'Angelo, some of these other more familiar names in South Florida. But before we started recording, you kind of looked at a little bit of a long shot in this race that you thought was at least interesting to consider in your vertical plays.
Yeah, the number 8, Volatile, is pretty interesting. I mean, the horse seems to be improving with every start. I think she ran a 69 last time out, which is, on the par with where some of these are either at or have run before. So this horse has, a right to take a step forward here. And I think, 20-1 on the morning line is a pretty big price. So that horse definitely have some interest in underneath.
Yeah. And that's when picks up Johnny Velasquez on the mount. And which is never a bad thing. And also you pointed out a lot of speed in this race.
Yeah.
This one can come from off the pace.
Exactly.
That's so important in these one-turn races. They just go too fast sometimes up front. And it's these horses that'll just, I remember that in the Devonadale a couple of years ago, there was way too much speed and it was won by horses coming from off the pace. So yeah, it's going to be a fun race. It's a great betting race. I mean, it's a fantastic betting race, especially if you're against maybe one of the top two choices. There's plenty of opportunity there. You know, the Queen's MG is a horse that I root for just because we saw her up in Saratoga. But I might just give her a race to get back into things, I think. And 5-1, knowing it's a Saffy horse, probably going to get back down a little bit as well. But yeah, that Cox duo is going to be tough to beat in the Ford Gal. Well, let's finish things up here in New York, and that is with the Withers Stakes going 1 1/8. We do this thing in New York. We go 1 1/8 in the early preps, and then we cut them back to a mile. I don't know why. We're going to talk to the racing office about this, but we're going 1 1/8 for 3-year-olds, 7-horse field. Listen, it's an interesting group. You have a horse like Captain Cook, who's your favorite for Rick Dutrow, coming off a very impressive maiden victory last time out, but that was admittedly over a sloppy sealed track, though we are expecting wet track conditions on Saturday up here. You have a horse like Mo Quality, who ran second to Cole Battle last time out in that Smarty Jones down at Oaklawn Park. You have the Brad Cox horse, Uncle Jim, who had a little bit of a troubled start last time out and finished third, but has shown some ability. You have a horse like Omaha, who closed from the clouds last time, and so this is a fun race up here. It's only 7 horses, but I think you can make a legit argument for at least 4 of them to win this race.
Yeah, you definitely can. Starting with, Uncle Jim, I think, is the horse that is going to maybe improve the most out of all these. I think, he ran a 68 last time out, seems to be improving steadily. So I think that's one that you'll see take probably a big step up here. And then your morning line favorite, Captain Cook, you could definitely find some holes in the pedigree in terms of distance.
Sure.
But that horse was just sold, I think, for what, 420, 450 in the November sale after coming out of that maiden race.
Right.
So clearly, they really liked what they saw in that maiden race to pick that horse up off of that debut. And I was also pretty impressed by the way the horse ran. So I'm willing to take a chance and take him back here and see how he runs. And
I think that's a good point too, because the race you're referring to that he debuted in was not a particularly great race. He finished, I think, 4th or 5th in that race, and
they brought him up here.
Exactly, they brought him up here, and so to purchase him for that much coming out of even a non-win really speaks to the sort of potential they saw in this horse. And Rick Dutrow Jr.'s barn is starting to heat up here in New York, so that's something to pay attention to. And listen, a horse that I'll just touch briefly on Mo Quality. Again, not a pedigree that would necessarily suggest 1 1/8 is what this horse wants to do, but out of Motown, or by Motown, I should say. But this one ran second to Cole Battle, and last weekend we saw, the winner of the Southwest, Speed King. Well, he finished second to Cole Battle in the Springboard Mile, and then comes back to win the Southwest. Cole Battle's a pretty dang good horse, it turns out. So it is interesting. Chris Davis has not had a single starter at Aqueduct over the last 5 years. Now he brings this horse up. To me, it indicates they think they have a Derby horse, but they don't want to go through the big boys down at Oaklawn Park, going against Ken McPeak, going against Brad Cox, going against all the other all the other trainers down there. And so this is maybe a little bit of an easier route for them to get a couple of points, but they clearly have some faith in the horse and the ability that this horse might be able to get the 2 turns. We'll see. It kind of ran in place the last time out. That Smarty Jones was kind of a little bit of a merry-go-round race. So we'll see.
For sure. And going off of that, a horse that is going to get the 2 turns is the 7 Omaha,
Yes.
Who, if this is a horse that likes to come from off the pace. Originally, when I was looking at this race, I was like, I don't really know if this horse is going to get the setup that he needs. But, things could get heated with a couple of horses that you don't really know what their running style are yet.
Yeah.
And, Captain Cook and Mo Quality and Uncle Jim, those horses are probably going to want to go.
Yeah.
And then it could get a little heated and set up for a horse like Omaha to come from off the pace. And that horse I mean, I thought the way that he looked last time out was super impressive, and clearly he wants any distance that he can get as well.
Yeah, and one of the things to point out about Omaha is that he doesn't really need pace to run into. Like that, the pace in that the race with Cyclone State was not a particularly strong pace in that Jerome. So he can close even if it's a modest fraction. So even if it doesn't get too crazy up front, which I think you're right, it has the potential to. But even if it doesn't, he's going to make his run. And yeah, I'm excited to see this horse. 4-1, Pride of Iowa. Let's go. And so I like, or not the Pride of Iowa, that's Cyclone State that I'm thinking about, Pride of Iowa. But Omaha, he's not even a Nebraska bred, but we'll pass on that for another day for all you geography fans out there. But this one will be a lot of fun up here in New York. Kaylie, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's really heating up right now because I feel like this next month, we're really going to start to see the cream rise to the top. And in both these Oaks and Derby preps.
I think so too. I'm excited, to see some names come back again, Citizen Bull, Ferocious, and then say I'm definitely most excited for the Tenma Cipriani showdown. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So
yes, Sunday at 4:00. I know exactly what she's going to be doing, which is watching that race, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I think a lot of folks are going to be watching that one with a lot of interest for future Oaks wagers and all that. But listen, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate everybody's support for the NYRA Bets channel. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. For Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis. Wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you it's now post time.